Okay, this Saudi thing, this how this Saudi deal with Pakistan is not anything new. It comes from Obama's second term. Uh, it's a bigger deal that you see Obama wanted to rule like a king and wanted to bail out the Eurodollar system, the shadow banking. He wanted to control the economy basically, and he wanted to shut down the military. Was this idea that these are all ideas of Bob Rubin because Obama had no capacity to think such things. But then the plan was that you don't need the military any longer. You don't need uh, supply chains, right? You just have the dollar, and then you just bail out shadow banking. You cooperate with Beijing and Moscow, and voila, all will be okay. So Bob Rubin and Obama started this Iran talks in order to prevent the military from first bombing Iran, second shutting it down. Just basically, they didn't think it was needed anymore. And third, in order to avoid any attempts at impeachment, Obama started, and Bob Rubin and Obama started this woke civil war in order to get the conservatives distracted. They had Eric Holder uh, defining conservatives as terrorists, as enemies of the state. It was part of the DOJ platform. And so that is the start of the Civil War, Cold Civil War in Washington, D.C. And the basis was that we have the dollar, we no longer need the Pentagon. Let's cooperate with Moscow and Beijing to save the shadow banking, and it's all fine. All that. So we're going to freely trade. And in order to distract the military and the conservatives, we just start a civil war, the woke cancel culture, the race war, which Obama and Bob Rubin started. And as a consequence, everything flipped. The conservatives responded with Trump, continuing responding to the civil war, and copying the exact same playbook, anti-military, pro-shadow banking, cooperation with Xi Jinping, with Beijing and Moscow, uh, against what they call now the deep state, because it worked. It worked for Rubin and Bob Rubin and Obama, so it was supposed to work for Steve Bannon and Trump. Uh, and here we are now. And the situation is very similar to Brexit, the UK versus Europe, because the whole point of the narrative of the campaign for Brexit was that we have the City of London, we control all shadow banking, which is true, and the entire world uses UK law to do trade, which is the maritime trade, the insurance trade. It's all based on London laws, City of London laws. So they thought there would be some kind of rentiers, they just get a percentage here, a percentage there. You don't need to work hard. You don't need to have a military. And they're just going to do free trade with Europe, the rest of Europe, which again didn't happen. No, European Union basically blockaded and then forced the UK into a very humiliating deal because it's 7 times smaller in both GDP and population. US versus what they call now the global South is a very similar situation. We have the dollar, right? They have no option but to use the dollar, so we can cooperate with them. We're going to do trade with them, free trade, but they have no option but to do free trade with us because we have the dollar. So it's very similar, UK versus EU during Brexit, but that's at a larger scale. Uh, that is the background of all these Saudis now. Seeing that Obama destroyed the entire structure of alliances they had, the deep state had in the Middle East, by approaching Iran and ruining previous structures, which Trump continued. And we have gotten to a point that actually started in 2014 that the deep state was no longer bothering with Obama. They created their own diplomatic network via the military attaches. And the military, the Pentagon, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they legally started bypassing and overriding Obama's orders. And and later Trump's orders, and now Trump's orders. So what the deep state did, they bombed Qatar, Doha, via Israel. They didn't tell Trump, and Trump accepted that, admitted that. What the Saudis now noticed, and the Middle East, and they're saying, these guys are openly in civil war. They were reoriented towards China since 2021, right after COVID. But the reorientation was kind of real, but not part of the narrative. Now it became part of the narrative because the deep state bombed Qatar. The Saudis now are allocating more and more and more crude oil to China's storage, which means that the barter system between China and the rest of the global South is working even wider, not better, but wider, because it's still a primitive system. But as long as the goal is to destroy the West, they don't care. On the other hand, they are not saying it, but the studies that I've seen is that you have no choice but to cooperate with China because everything comes from China. The West cannot have an economy without Chinese rare earths and components. So basically, you are obligated to work with China, period. So all these countries, like Middle East countries and Brazil and BRICS, India, you just have no choice but to work with China. You can't exist. You are going to have hunger riots, hunger revolution, if you don't work with China. Like the Saudi economy cannot exist without China. Like literally. So this is the history of the stunning agreement between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, which now Saudis are now integrating themselves with the Chinese weapons system. So they are expounding themselves gradually from the American weapons structure to be gradually integrating with the Chinese weapons structure via Pakistan because they have no choice, right? The West has declined. America has permanently declined. Europe has permanently declined. Has the only choice which is underway, and I'm telling you it is underway, is the merging of the supply chains between US and EU. It's happening. It's going to become more self-evident by 2030, 2035, but it is happening because we have declined. And the only way to exist is by united, by merging the United States or North American and the European supply chains. So everything is bad. Everything will get worse. No light at the end of the tunnel. Have no hope. The worst is yet to come.